The topic of Lecture 7 is Functional Sentence Perspective and the Informational Organization of the Text. A considerable contribution to the development of text linguistics has been made by those scholars who belonged to the Prague linguistic school. They focused on the functional, that's communicative informational aspect of the language. Czech linguists, Denis Firbas and others, worked out a theory known as functional sentence perspective that formed the cognitive basis for the informational development of the text. It showed how the semantic and syntactic structures of the sentence function in fulfilling the communicative purpose intended for the sentence. They disclosed that relations of thoughts to each other and mental processes underlie the informational development of the text and affect the arrangement of words in sentences. In other words, they succeeded to uncover the organizing principles in language that account for the ordering of information in discourse beyond the level of the sentence. According to this theory, each sentence functionally proceeds from the previous one, pushing the message from the given or known piece of information called the theme to the actual new information called the rime. Masesius, the founder of the Prague linguistic school, defined the term theme under two concepts. One, as the starting point of the utterance, that which is known or at least is obvious in the given situation and from which the speaker proceeds. And the other, as the foundation of the utterance, as something that is being spoken in the sentence. Accordingly, rime is what the speaker says about or in regard to the theme, the starting point of the utterance. Masesius focused on the nature of theme as something that can be logically gathered from the previous context, while rime expresses something unknown, something new that pushes the message forward. Theme-rime distribution of information shows clearly that it's impossible to limit linguistic analysis to sentence structure, that functional analysis of lingual units require a textual level. Scholars focus on the importance of themes and topics in text building, claiming that the information which is contained within the themes of the sentences of a passage correlates with the method of development of the passage. A concentration on the theme has frequently tended to involve a relative neglect of the rime, except in its static conception as the newsworthy element of the message. Another Czech linguist, Firbas, considers that themes will be the main constructing elements of the text, while rimes will push the message forward. Most linguistic studies illustrate how the functions of themes and rimes have tended to be treated separately. A more dynamic view is that of Denis's concept of semantic progression. He claims that the organization of information in text is determined by the arrangement of utterance themes and their rimes. His concentration on the relationship between successive themes and their themes would appear to provide a more satisfactory account of the method of development of texts. Similarly, Firbas points out that it is typically the rime that pushes the message forward, whereas from the viewpoint of text organization, it is the theme that plays an important constructing role. The thematic organization of the text is closely connected with its coherence or connectivity. A text is defined as text largely in terms of its semantic coherence. However, it is useful to remember, as Danish points out, that texts are not always perfect. They not only display coherence to an uneven degree, but some may be characterized as discontinuous. The reason for less than optimal coherence may be that the speaker or the writer is simply not controlling the mass of information that is successively accumulated as the text unfolds. This mass of information is mostly so intensive that the speaker or the writer necessarily makes a choice, and this choice, as Danish claims, is predetermined directly or indirectly by the selection of utterance. Danish's important contribution lies in the fact that he extended the concept of theme as the point of departure of a single utterance or sentence to that of explaining the inner connectivity of texts. His basic assumption is that text connexity is represented, among other things, by thematic progression. By this, he means the choice and ordering of utterance themes, their mutual contamination and hierarchy, as well as their relationship to the hyperthemes of the superior text segments, such as a chapter, paragraph, etc., to the whole text and to the situation. As Danish indicates, thematic progression might be viewed as the skeleton of the plot. Danish postulates three main types of thematic progression. The first type is simple linear progression of information, during which each rime becomes the theme of the next utterance. This type of communicative development of the text can be represented schematically, where the vertical arrows indicate the process of thematization of the rime in each following sentence. You see this scheme on your monitors. We can apply this model of thematic progression of information, for example, to a textual segment borrowed from All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren. The symbols T and R and brackets are designating themes and rimes correspondingly, while the numbers in them indicate the number of sentences. I'll read the text. Then Lucy Starr got up from her chair, walked to the boss, and laid her hand on his right arm. He drew away without looking at her, but she took him by the forearm and drew him. After a momentary resistance, he followed her, and she led him back to the chintz-covered big chair. The second type of communicative development of text is thematic progression of information with a constant, continuous theme. The essence of this model lies in the fact that the theme preserves its stable position, remaining unchanged throughout the whole microtext, while the text unfolds with the help of rimes, each of them introducing a piece of new information concerning the theme. Graphically, it looks like this. So, the symbol T indicates the hypertheme, which remains unchanged throughout the whole microtext. You see it in the scheme, and the theme in each sentence takes a new rime which brings a new piece of information concerning the theme. This type of thematic progression of information is common in monothematic descriptive microtext. For instance, this model can be applied to the microtext borrowed from Huxley's Chrome Yellow. The author depicts an impressive verbal portrait of Ivor Lombard, the main hero of the passage. I'll read the text. Nature and fortune had vied with one another in heaping on Ivor Lombard all their choicest gifts. He had wealth, and he was perfectly independent. He was good-looking, possessed an irresistible charm of manner, and he was the hero of more amorous successes than he could remember. He had a beautiful, untrained tenor voice, and he could improvise with a startling brilliance rapidly and loudly on the piano. He was a good amateur medium and telepathist, and had a considerable first-hand knowledge of the next world. He could write rhymes with an exceptional rapidity. For painted symbolical pictures he had a dashing style. He excelled in amateur theatricals, and when occasion offered he could cook with genius. He resembled Shakespeare in knowing a little Latin and less Greek. For a mind like his, education seemed unnecessary, since his natural aptitude would have been destroyed by training. The third type of communicative development of the text is thematic progression of information with derived themes from the hypertheme. The Nash's-own illustration of Type 3 is a short description of New Jersey. Intuitively, we would feel that texts about places tend to occur in various written genres, discounting for the moment spoken genres such as casual conversation. We can find this model of thematic progression of the text in encyclopedia entries, tourist guidebooks, travel brochures, and as settings to narratives. On the basis of linguistic evidence regarding the realizations of themes and dreams, we might be able to hypothesize which type of thematic progression might be prevalent in a particular genre. Participants' descriptions of places, as of persons and things, abound in everyday printed matters. Here is a short description of a quiet resort spot, St. Vincent, from the holiday section of a Sunday supplement to the Observer. I'll read the text. St. Vincent is small, 18 miles long and 11 wide, mountainous and lush. Banana plantations cling to steep volcanic hills, and coconut palms sway in the brisk trade winds which lash the Atlantic coast. The people are warm, friendly, and poor. Unemployment is between 30 and 40%, but few go hungry in such lush surroundings. The thematic progression type adopted in the St. Vincent text consists entirely of derived themes from the hypertheme, which is represented in the text by the toponym St. Vincent. The only exception is that of clauses 3 and 4, which is simple linear because trade winds belonging to the rhetoric complex in clause 3 converts into the theme of clause 4, which is represented lexically by the pronoun which. Semantically, there is a great variety of derived themes that are not restricted by geographical features. In the text, they are represented by the italicized words such as banana plantations, coconut palms, trade winds, the people, unemployment, a few, which inform not only about the landscape or plants, but also about the people and their unemployment. The communicative intention of the writer of this text seems to be aimed at an educated, though conservative, English-speaking tourist reader with conventional ideas about tropical countries. Banana plantations are considered to be exciting for such readers as are coconut palms with appropriate descriptive accompanying circumstances. Therefore, the pragmatic purpose of such text is that of persuading the potential holidaymaker, in contrast with purely informative purpose of the encyclopedia entry. Graphically, this model can be represented by this scheme. So, the symbol T at the top of the model represents a hypertheme which is explicated by the toponym Saint Vincent in the text, while the arrows point to the constituent microthemes, each having its own rime or rhematic complex. Danish remarks on possible complicated utterances built up by coordination, nominalizations, apposition, relative clauses, etc. He indicates that certain combinations may constitute thematic progression types of a higher order, representing a formal frame for the employment of the basic types. The most important of such frames is thematic progression of type 2, that is, thematic progression of information with a constant, continuous themes with complicated split rimes. This model is often quoted as model 4, type 4, The peculiarity of this model lies in the fact that split rimes have their own theme rime structure, as they are always represented by propositional constructions in which subject-predicate semantic relationship is realized. For instance, let's consider the text. I saw the people walking in the plaza of little town in the desert. I saw the waitress in the restaurant waving feeble protest at the fly. I saw the traveling salesman standing at the hotel desk just ahead of me. I saw the sheep herder standing alone on an enormous mesa. I saw the Indian woman with eyes the color of blackstrap molasses looking at me over a pile of pottery. As I looked at all these people, I felt great strength in my secret knowledge. In this example, thematic progression of the text is carried out with the help of complicated split rimes represented by propositional nominalized constructions as complex objects, which creates syntactic parallelism, thus making the narration more expressive and emotional. It should be noted that such complicated models of thematic progression of information is found only in fiction texts. The analysis of the empirical material shows that in English literary texts, thematic progression of type 2 can be complicated with parallel theme rime development of the microthemes constituting the theme as a whole. We have this type of thematic progression of the information and the text given below. I'll read the text. They stood before each other now. Lester pale and rather flaccid, Robert clear, wax-like, well-knit and shrewd. Robert was the clean, decisive man, Lester the man of doubts. Robert was the spirit of business energy and integrity embodied, Lester the spirit of commercial self-sufficiency, looking at life with uncertain eyes. Together they made a striking picture. This textual segment represents a microtext in which thematic progression of the information is realized according to type 2, which is modified in a peculiar way. The theme of the message is represented by the Kane brothers Lester and Robert, whereas the rimes contain their contrastive characterizations, pushing the message forward to the final phrase in which the brothers are again jointly represented as one whole, making a striking picture. Danish claims that the main types of thematic progression are to be considered as abstract principles, as models or constructs constituting a functional explanation of the ordering of information in microtexts. On a macrostructural level, they may be employed in various combinations, as we rarely meet texts with only one type of thematic progression. The implementation or manifestation of these models in particular languages depends on the peculiarities of the given language, especially on the means which are available for expressing functional sentence perspective. However, these models of thematic progression of the information appear to be universal for many languages and fully applicable to any kind of text. Therefore, an awareness of them will be helpful in revealing the internal organization of the communicative development of the text. That's all for this lecture. Thank you for attention. See the references here.